Are you fed up, America? Are you tired of the direction this country is going? Welcome to my podcast, It Ain't Right, where we dive deeper into the most pressing issues facing America today. Homelessness, rampant drug use, an open southern border, veterans literally dying on the streets, crime, government spending, and inflation, all of it out of control. I'm Kate Monroe, CEO of vetcom.us. We're here to talk about solutions to these big problems. I've walked the streets talking to homeless in cities all across America. I've actually been to the southern border countless times and even secured an open area with razor wire. And I've made hundreds of media appearances.
Kate Monroe can be seen regularly on Fox News, Newsmax, News Nation, and countless other media outlets weighing in on the major issues facing America and giving a voice on the national stage for America's veterans.
This is our first of many episodes, and I want to thank you for joining us. Now I'd like to introduce my very first guest, Chad Robichaux. Chad's a former Force Recon Marine, URAD, Semper Fidelis, and DoD contractor with 8 deployments to Afghanistan as part of a Joint Special Operations Command Task Force. Now, in 2011, he founded Mighty Oaks, which has touched the lives of more than 500,000 individuals within the military and first responder communities through faith-based resiliency and recovery programs. I love that. In 2021, Chad led a rescue mission into Afghanistan, saving our 17,000 lives, including his Afghan teammate Aziz and his family. What a blessing you are, Chad. Please welcome Chad Robichaux. Oh my gosh, is there anything you don't do? You're amazing.
Sleep. I think that's the only thing.
Yeah. Eat, sleep, conquer, repeat, right?
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm excited, especially knowing this year you do so much media, but this is your first podcast. So
yeah, it's my first of my own podcast. Like you, I end up being on a lot of other people's podcasts, and I always think, man alive, I wish they'd ask me this and ask me that. So here's our opportunity to do that. So I love that. So you and I have some things in common. Before we jump in, all the listeners, you and I were both in the Marine Corps, which is awesome. I absolutely love that, Semper Fi. And we both are martial artists. So I'm going to tell you what I did in martial arts, which is like teeny tiny and lame compared to what you did. But I want to hear a little bit about that because I love MMA. So I did 5 years of Muay Thai. And I love Muay Thai. I love to do kickboxing, very athletic sport. But then I got into Shotokan karate. Absolutely loved Shotokan, all the kata and the discipline. I was the California state champion here in California in 2008. So that's my little tiny brief career in martial arts. But I want to hear more about you. Tell us about your MMA background. I love that.
No, well, first of all, that's Muay Thai is incredible art. So that's anytime somebody says they did different striking, my 2 favorite forms of striking is just basic Western boxing and Muay Thai kickboxing. It's the most effective, and it's actually also like not only like opinionated most effective. It's if you look at the UFC, which is where it's the proving ground for what martial arts actually work. That's the 2 arts that you see represented in people that win. As a professional MMA fighter, I'm 18-2. I'm retired, but I was 18-2 as my professional record, and 17 of those 18 wins were by submission. And so, as a jiu-jitsu guy, like that makes me really proud to represent my art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and submitting, not just submitting people, but submitting very high-level professional MMA fighters. And so,
yeah, of course. I mean, it's something that I'm really proud of too, and I think it gives you a lot of confidence. Being a martial artist, you're very in tune with your own body and what you can do. And it's always made me feel as a woman. Now, I'm not a small woman. I'm 5'9", 160. So I'm a force to be reckoned with anyway. But it definitely does give me an augmented sense of self when I'm out and about. I'm not as scared as I might be otherwise. But I want to bring something up that I didn't even plan to talk about. But a lot of people, because you know that I do VA compensation for veterans.
Yes.
And one of the biggest questions I get asked or gets told to me is, well, I'm not disabled. And I go, well, I feel like I'm a very abled person. I'm very abled. I have managed to climb, to this level of success. I still work out every day, do, martial arts stuff over my time. So what would you say to your fellow vets whose impression of getting rated for compensation means somehow that they have to be disabled in a way that doesn't allow them to live their life? Because I think that there's a big stigma here that prevents people from collecting their compensation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say, there's lots of organizations out there to help with this. And when I learned about you and VetCom and learned not only what you guys did, but how you did it, and the fact that you were a United States Marine and it was being led out of really just a passion to care for your fellow service members, your brothers and sisters that served, and not out of like a economic opportunity for people leveraging, business off the veteran community. I was very impressed by that. I got a chance to look into what you guys do, and I from now here on out, you got VetCom will be where I recommend people. And by the way, for those listening, I signed up as well to finish my claim, because I've kind of been sitting at 80%, and the reason I'm sitting at 80% is because exactly the reason you said. I had this mentality that people worse than me, have I've lost 15 friends through my deployments. I have got buddies that don't have limbs, or people that are in wheelchairs, or they're traumatic brain injuries to where they're at the point of like a 5-year-old now, and so that really put a layer of guilt on me that why should I get 100%?
Like a lack of worthiness.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that, it's kind of held me back. And my VA, if you look at my VA paperwork at 80%, I probably have another like 400% of stuff that is like service connected 0%.
Zero, yeah.
Service connected 0%. Service connected 0%. And if it's service connected, it shouldn't be 0%. And I just never went through the process. Another thing that is like, I don't want to. The VA has made it so difficult to do this that it's like they make it so difficult that you don't even want to go through it. And
well, like it was easier for you to go to the Ukraine and help save people than go through the quagmire at the VA.
Yeah.
Like that should tell you everything you need to know about how hard it is.
I mean, it sounds horrible, but there's a reason that veterans go in the VA parking lot, and they have, by the way, in high numbers, and kill themselves in the VA parking lot. I mean, you have a decorated Marine went and got in his dress blues, took all his VA paperwork, sat on the pile of his paperwork, and shot himself in the VA parking lot. And this has happened many times. It's just it's a megaphone saying this system's broken, and what you guys have come in and do and help make that process easier and help come alongside. And so for me, like looking at what you guys did and talking to you on the phone, I was like, okay, I'm finally going to do it. And I'm in that process with you guys now to finally do it. And it's not just about me. It's, I think it's about my family too. Like a lot of the benefits, especially when you're looking at 100%, my family will benefit a lot from that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I say this very humbly, but a lot of people in the veteran community, because of my job at Mighty Oaks and what I do, and having served over 500,000 veterans, look to me and well, where are you at? 80%. Why are you at 80%? And if I answer them honestly, I'm not giving them the right answer I should be giving them, because I was lazy. I didn't want to get it because I feel guilty, and that's not fair. So I feel almost like an obligation in my position to go forward and do it for the reason you talked about. And for those who are thinking like the same things I thought, man, look, it's not about a paycheck. It's not about being I, by the way, do not believe that any veteran in any capacity, no matter how banged up you are, should ever take 100% disability check, go home, sit on the couch and put your feet up and say, my country owes me this. Right. And I'm going to be a government dependent the rest of your life. That is not okay for any service member. You take that uniform off and you go forth and you do something purposeful again. You get back in your home, in your community, in this country, because this country needs people who served, and the men and women that served, to go back and lead in this country. So I'm certainly not suggesting you take the 100% disability check and kick your feet up. What I'm saying is, by getting the benefits that you have, it's going to put you in a better position to be able to do more, to be able to serve. All these benefits are not just for you; they're for your family, and they frees you up and gives you more, like, less pressure in your life. Anytime you get a financial burden lifted off of you, you have less pressure and you can do more and be more productive. I think it's something that every veteran should do, is get the max benefits that you can, and you can need help to do it. And what you guys are doing is awesome. So thank you on behalf of the veteran community for what VetCom's doing.
Well, we didn't pay Chad to say all that great
stuff. I mean it.
I mean, I really appreciate your take on it, because, sometimes veterans have analysis paralysis. They're like, do I do it myself? Do I go to a free organization? Do I use a lawyer? Do I use VetCom? Like, what do I do? And then they do nothing. And then, 10, 20, 30 years goes by and we lose $250,000, $500,000, $1 million to do something that we probably should just do today. So I really appreciate you, telling the vets, hey, we got to go get it done. But I want to ask you a quick question. So you talked about when we get out of the service, even if we're rated at 100, we still need to go forth and do things good for the world, do good things for veterans, do good things for our family financially. But before we become veterans, we have to serve, right? You first have to serve in the military. So for me, I was assaulted in service. I smashed my nose in eye socket, my right elbow, my right ankle. And a lot of people say, Kate, why do you still tell people to go in the service in light of the fact that all that happened to you? Would you go back and do it again? Would if you had to get assaulted again and smash your face and do all that, would you have served again? And I tell them, if I had a time machine and I was presented the choice in that, recruiting station to go in again, even if I had to, even so, I would still do it, because you and I would not be talking right now. I might not have run for Congress. I might not be, who I am without that. So what is your impression of your service, and what would you tell other people if they're thinking about serving?
Yeah, I mean, every service member's story is different. You were a Marine, I was a Marine, and when we go in the Marine Corps, because young kids are not smart enough to follow instructions, they put yellow footprints to make them super simple. Where you go stand on those yellow footprints and like stand here because you don't even know how to stand, in front of somebody, behind somebody, to somebody's left, somebody's right. Everything's explained to you. But when a young man or woman, and I'm using the Marine Corps example, stands on these yellow footprints, there's something that's very special in that moment that I think most Marine Corps recruits don't even understand. I get a chance to speak at every boot camp cycle for 10 years now, and I get to tell them this same thing. When you stand those yellow footprints, it's a transition point of your life. It doesn't matter where you came from. If your daddy was rich or poor, if you're black, white, Asian, male, female, it doesn't matter if you lived in the projects or a mansion or the ghetto. Like, none of that matters. Like, when you stand those yellow footprints, you get an opportunity to change the trajectory of your life. It could be bad, right? You could make some poor decisions in the military, or it could be really good. It could be a life-changing moment for you. And for me, I went in at 17 years old. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, a lot of physical abuse in my home to me and my family. When I was 15 years old, I was living on my own. My brother, who was planning to join the military with, was shot and killed. And so when I went in the Marine Corps at 17 years old, it was based on hardship. I met a recruiter, the Marine Corps recruiter named Staff Sergeant Ronald Brown, and I told him my story, and I told him how my lifelong dream was to be a reconnaissance Marine, and how I wasn't even going to graduate high school. And he helped me get in the Marine Corps in 1993 without even a high school diploma, not a GED, anything. He wrote a letter, and I don't know anybody else that this happened for, but I got in the Marine Corps without even a high school diploma. And
I would like to meet that guy and thank him. What a good
I would like to meet him again. I mean, I remember his name, right? Staff Sergeant Ronald Brown.
We need to find him.
30 years later. And I always say most people remember the recruiter because they hate them. I remember my recruiter because I love this guy. He bet on me. And I want to tell him what happened. I want to tell him that I've kept my promise after infantry school to get a GED. And then I never stopped getting educated since then. I got an MBA from New York Tech. I'm about to finish my second master's from Harvard University. All these things that I got to do. Why did I get to do it? Because the Marine Corps gave me a chance.
I had a kind of a different story, but I grew up in a teeny tiny town as well. And I was actually already in a full ride scholarship to college when I came home that summer and said, I don't really know what career track I want. I feel like I'm in the wrong educational track. I feel like I don't really have a testimony, going back to God. Like, I feel like I had such a good childhood. It's hard for me to connect with people, to understand and be empathetic. I want to go in the service. I actually was going to go in the Air Force. Long story. The Marine Corps recruiter saved the day, and I ended up going into, the Marine Corps. But I had a very different path there. But I really credit where I am today, the kind of resiliency I have. And I look at everything like, somebody said to me, Kate, how are you going to write a book? And I thought that was hilarious. I'm thinking, like, I was a Marine. Like, writing a book is not that difficult. Martial arts became not that difficult. Both of our rises to becoming, CEOs and being on the news and helping people around the world. The Marine Corps, I feel, was kind of my launching pad, the foundation for the rest of my life. And I always encourage people, yes, you're going to face some adversity when you go in, but it's going to be well worth it. So I want to pivot now and get your opinion on something. So I was on Fox the other day, and I took a little jab at JD Vance because he did not talk much about his military service when he addressed the nation. And I think it's because he feels like a lot of veterans, and I want to get your opinion, he did journalism in the Marine Corps. And a lot of Marines may look at that like, oh, yeah, I did journalism. All the old war dogs, they want to, yeah. And like, who are you to say you're a Marine? Yeah. But it's that mentality that robs veterans of their love of their service, of the pride in their service, of being able to go and get rated for their VA disability compensation. So what is your opinion? Do you think that he should be more forward about his service in the Marine Corps or not?
he should be proud of his service, and I'm proud of him for his service, and I'm proud of every man and woman that's raised their hand and were willing to serve, even those, by the way, who were discharged dishonorably because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
At some point in your life, they were brave enough and selfless enough to stand before our Constitution and raise their hand, and stand before a flag and raise their hand and make an oath to defend people who can't help themselves. And that, there's a lot that's said in that, but really that's what it's about, and defend our nation. And so that's admirable no matter what your job was. And look, I was a young Marine, and I was a young reconnaissance Marine, and there's a lot of ego that comes with that. And so like
badass Marine.
Yeah. So that's like you're like, Pogue, I made the joke, Pogue earlier, is primary other than grunt, like anybody that's not an infantry guy, or and it's just a joke thing. It's just fun, like jabbing. But what I learned after 8 deployments and being around the military, 14 years in special operations, being around the military for 30 years now, what I learned through my experience in combat is that every job in the military, no matter what it is, plays a big role to come together to make us do one thing, and to do one thing and one thing well, and that's to win wars and protect our nation and defend people around the world that can't defend themselves. And all those jobs are so important. And going to combat really educated me on how important all these jobs are and how they work together. And it gave me a real appreciation.
Like supply.
Yeah.
Supply. How are you going to set everything up? How are you going to eat? How are you going to have, medical? I tell people the military is sort of a reflection of, everyday life. On a base, you have to have people that do the same things that they do out in the world. Somebody's got to cook food. Somebody's got to take care of you medically, like all of these things. So I always challenge veterans, no matter the way in which you serve, whatever your MOS or job was, take pride in that, because you supported the mission, which is to keep our country safe and protect our sovereignty as a nation.
And I'll also say beyond that, beyond the job part, again, I want to double down on the fact, like, every job's important, and
yes,
regardless of what your job did, like, you were part of serving our nation, keeping our nation safe. But beyond the job, the fact that people deployed or didn't deploy, that shouldn't matter either. Like, you don't get to choose in the military if you're going to deploy. I mean, combat's going, you can volunteer, but a lot of times people want to deploy and they don't get the opportunity to deploy, and they live in guilt, and they don't feel like they should rate benefits and things like that because they didn't actually deploy. And no, that's not true. Like, whether you deployed or not, if you raise your hand and were willing to serve, at that point, you put yourself in a position to where you were available to deploy. And that's a significant thing. By the way, that's only 0.5, I think 0.45, 0.5%. Not even a full percent, 0.5% of our nation does that.
Well, I mean, I think too, that was probably a pivotal moment for him. You ended up going to, Yale Law, becoming a congressman. A lot of that traction that you get serving when you're young propels you on when you're older. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Trump picked him, because he can, talk to that veteran base. So I really hope that they pick up speed there. I hate to have had to take a little poke at him, but I feel like he deserved it a little bit. It's like, hey, guy, you served in the Marine Corps. The Marines are like, hey,
you can handle it.
Yeah, like let's get going with this Marine stuff. My very last question before we jump into some of our heavier topics. You and I know, both been on the news. I'm sure you have a bunch talking about the assassination attempt. So you have some additional background that maybe I didn't mention. So why don't you talk a little bit about that background you have that makes you, an authority here to talk about what happened in the assassination and in your opinion?
Well, I think I have two sides of the background with this. One is as a Force Recon Marine and being on JSOC task force. Not for the United States, but for other people, I was the bad guy, right? I was the enemy of our bad guys. Like, I'm the one that's trying to kill bad guys, and so I'm looking at it from the guy that's trying to kill someone. I get that perspective, right? How it'd be someone trying to be the assaulter, and then I have the perspective of a time where I served at the State Department, the U.S. State Department. I was a senior program manager for the surveillance detection program. And it's a kind of a niche, unique special program within the State Department. And a surveillance detection program is mostly former special operations guys that do the advising and security for embassies, consulates, and the ambassadors and the RSOs, or regional security officers for the State Department, to make sure that that their facilities are safe, especially in hostile places. And so just like the advanced party would have done for President Trump's rally speech, which the director of the Secret Service talked about it it was done 5 days in advance.
Kim Cheeto.
Cheeto. Yeah. Now that's her new nickname is Cheeto.
Yeah.
I was asking Chanel Rihanna on One American News, how do you pronounce her name? And she said it's Cheeto. So that's her new nickname. But she said they did this 5 days in advance, and that's a very appropriate time, by the way, for this thing. So I have no beef with the time frame. They're doing it 5 days in advance. What I have a beef with is the fact that a shooter, a very ill-equipped shooter, I used the word sentient retard the other day on Newsmax, because that's essentially what he was. He got on a rooftop with a rifle, used a ladder, 150 yards from not only where a former president of the United States was, but the presidential front runner for the 2024 election. This is not a former. This is the next president. All polls showing the next president of the United States, the leader of the free world, and this guy was allowed to get on a rooftop 150 yards away and fire off a round that hit the president, and by only the grace of God, in my opinion, a miracle, spared his life. And that should have never happened. And I'll tell you, not from my opinion, but from 30 years of professional experience, he did not do that without some kind of coordinated effort with someone inside our government. Now, I won't say that, it's the deep state. I won't say it was the Secret Service is completely corrupt or the FBI is completely corrupt. The CIA did it. I don't know. But I will tell you this with 100% certainty, that guy did not fire off that round without being allowed to be on that roof by someone in the United States government.
I totally agree with you. And I even said, people always saying, well, it's easy to take a shot at 150 yards. It's like, okay, we'll go take the shot then. I mean, because, that we train as Marines for weeks, even during boot camp, and not everybody makes it through the rifle range. Like, you don't get to become a Marine if you can't be tactically focused and get your stuff done. So you're going to tell me this kid got in, managed to find a ladder because he didn't bring it with him. So he found a ladder. He managed to hide his rifle ahead of time, got up on the roof after a cop squared off with him. He got up there and he was calm enough and his breathing was even keel enough to take the shot. He would have taken the perfect shot if it weren't for divine intervention. Under Overwatch, he had to know somebody's already pointing a gun at him. So he had to know he could take the shot. That's my theory. And if he really took the shot, which I don't know if he did, you'd have to be very certain you were going to get the shot off in order to be calm enough to do it, in my opinion. But what do I know?
Well, the biggest factor is the fact that he even got there in the first place. As if I would have did that security vulnerability assessment, the first thing I would do is where is the target going to be, which is the principal, President Trump. Where's he going to be standing? You stand there, you look around. Okay, there's a rooftop 150 yards away, a pitched slope, which means he has cover to be able to hide, and he's got a clear shot to this podium. That there's a couple of things you could do to respond to that. You could say, okay, we're going to put Overwatch on it. We're going to put a counter sniper team. But in that scenario, any reasonable person would, especially the Secret Service, who they're supposed to be the experts at this, would have not put cover and concealment on it. I mean, would have not put Overwatch on it. They would have not put a counter sniper team on it. What they would have put on it is human beings. They would have secured that facility and put humans on the rooftop. Secret Service is on a rooftop because it wasn't like there's 20 roofs that had to do that. When there's like 20 roofs, that's when you start putting counter snipers and stuff.
Correct.
There's 1 or 2 or 3 rooftops. You put people up there. That's the most guaranteed way to prevent anything. And her excuse, when I say her, Director Cheeto's excuse was it was a pitched roof. And it was,
I'm like, what? I'm like, that'll really take you out, that pitch roof. I don't know how we're going
to have Christmas lights on her house.
I'm like, wasn't the other guy who took him out also on a pitch roof? Like, I'm so confused about why we can't get on. Like that's where that's where they lost him was the pitch roof. Yeah.
And then the fact that he had civilians for 5 minutes saying, hey, there's a guy walking through a field, crawling up to this building with a rifle. There's a guy climbing on the roof with a rifle. They're pointing at him. There's groups pointing at him. There's him on the roof and the civilians pointing at him. Look, this isn't like the Lincoln assassination. People had radios. These cops had radios, and they start communicating. If anything, even if they have the slightest bit of doubt, you still move the principal off the target. You still take President Trump off the stage.
Well, this happened before he came out. And the other thing is there was multiple. The what?
They knew ahead of time that there was a threat.
Correct. And they still allowed him to come out. So anyway, enough on the assassination. I think it's all going to shake out.
Where, if you want to.
Yeah, we can go on and on. I have all these theories, but okay. So let's just jump in. Some big things happened, and namely, President Biden dropping out of the race, him supposedly endorsing, Kamala Harris. So what are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't trust Kamala Harris to be like a local librarian.
Yeah, borders are.
I mean, she's just. I mean, look, I'm not being mean, or partisan here. She's just not a bright human being. She's not. No. She's and I mean, if you think that's the best America has to offer to be the leader of the United States and the leader of the free world, regardless of what your political affiliation is, something's very wrong with you. Like, this is not the best and brightest. This is not someone that we could trust being the leader of the free world in our country. I mean, her track record in politics is horrific. I mean, the Democrat Party has condemned her. President Biden condemned her, of all people. Like, I mean, she's just not. I can't imagine anyone thinking that she'd be the wisest choice for the president of the United States.
I'm actually going to go to the border tomorrow and make a video and challenge her to come to the border with me. I went down and secured 3 spots in San Diego's border. I've been very vocal about her, about the administration, about President Biden's fecklessness, malicious neglect on the border, their intention for Democrat supremacy. So I'm going to go tomorrow and make a video calling her out. It's like, you know what borders are? I'll be the borders are until there's a new one, because you're so inept in your role. So I feel like they're all complicit in our security.
Very. And they're responsible. Look, I mean, people need to remember. Everybody gets sucked into politics of the president of the United States, but people need to remember what the first and foremost responsibility is for the president of the United States is to keep our citizens safe. There's nothing that comes before that. The president of the United States is responsible first and foremost for keeping the citizens of America safe. He's the commander in chief. He oversees all of our Department of Defense, Department of Justice, all of our government agencies, our federal agencies he appoints. I don't agree with it, but the process we have is he appoints the leaders of these agencies. One of the reasons I don't agree with it is because you see a political favor, like putting Director Cheeto in charge of the Secret Service, and you've seen like James Comey in front and director of the FBI, and you see how these government offices get politicized and weaponized against their political opponents. So I don't agree with it for that, but nonetheless, they're in charge of all those things. So you have your first and foremost responsibility as the president of the United States is our national security. And for the last 3.5 years, she's compromised the national security of the United States. We have not only open borders and God knows how many people who we don't even know what they are coming into the United States, but we know for a fact we have thousands of military age males who came here without women and children, who crossed the border from countries like Syria, Iran, Africa,
Pakistan,
countries that hate us. And there were military fighting age males coming across in groups without women and children, and have been put in the United States, and we don't even know where they are right now. And
there's days I come through and all the people, because I go down every couple of weeks, sometimes there's hundreds of Chinese, all of them, in their 30s. There's only been one time I've ever gone to the border here in San Diego and there was children. Only one time. Every other time, the kind of stuff that I was able to film at the border was just, because people always say, well, you're not compassionate. You're not this. I'm like, you can stop. If you want to go to the border and actually see what it is, then you can comment on it. Until then, no more pontificating on what is and is not at the border.
And the children that do come across have wristbands by the cartels to be brought into the country to be sex trafficked. And you got the director of DHS, Mayorkas, that didn't even know about the wristbands. When he was asked before, a Senate hearing about the wristbands, he didn't even know about the wristbands. It's like, how do you not know about the wristbands?
Did you hear that the 85,000 children, that's all the ones that they know of, are totally unaccounted for? So I've been at the border where they will strip all the children away from their parents, put them in vans and drive them off. I don't even think they're their parents.
Yeah, of course not.
Where are these children? Where are these kids? Like, how as a country do we pretend like we need migrants to come here? For what? So they can go and work and then their kids can be sex trafficked? Is that the kind of compassion we need to show people if that's really why we're doing it?
Yeah, these people don't care, by the way. They're evil. And I don't think it's political. I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think this is like a blunder. I think it's very intentional and it's evil. And Kamala Harris is first and foremost responsible for that. And so not only has she done things like that to allow drugs and fentanyl and all these things coming to our country and terrorists and these young kids that are going to be exploited and sex trafficked. I mean, it's a violation to our national security, and she was responsible for it. And
I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I'm going to beat that drum every single day about how horrible she was here in California, because I ran for Congress here in California, and just how horrible she's been on the border. I don't know how, as an American, you can look at you, yourself, your family, and America and think that a vote for their administration is a vote for your safety. I don't understand how people don't have eyeballs and ears and can't make a common sense decision.
On top of all that, who could literally for 4 more years digest her laugh like I can. So
yeah, it ain't right. Her laugh drives me insane. That's why I called her Kamala Hyena Harris. I mean,
if anything else, like, let's not have her in, because I don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I just can't listen to her laugh. I agree. I mean, she makes us look crazy. So before we move on, I am very aware of how veterans, especially, were treated under President Trump and active duty. We weren't facing 3 wars. We had good recruiting numbers. What are your feeling, the dichotomy between the Trump administration and the Biden administration when it comes down specifically to our military members, both active duty and veterans?
Well, look, anybody listening, you could love Donald Trump, you could hate Donald Trump, you can have your opinions, but one thing I could guarantee you for certain is President Trump absolutely loves and adores the military.
Loves.
100%. Like, you cannot argue that. And in turn, the United States military and our troops love President Trump. Yeah. They do. I've been in and around the military for 30 years. During President Trump's presidency, going around the bases, people were so proud of our commander-in-chief. They love President Trump, and it's not just because of his personality. It's not just because it was because of policy. Yeah, you can't debate or contest policy, and that's why when I was a surrogate on the Trump campaign, I was a veterans policy surrogate. It was super easy because you can't put anybody in front of me and debate President Trump's policy. You can't do it. Like,
same.
Yeah. I mean, look, you look at the ROEs, the rules of engagement in combat, under President Bush, under President Obama, and under President Trump, and then under Joe Biden. All 4 presidents served for Afghanistan. You can't contest it. I mean, you had a handful of and I don't want to quote the numbers right now, but I can tell you had a handful of deaths in Afghanistan during President Trump's 4 years. You had thousands of deaths.
But what was President Trump's response? He is the most FAFO president ever. When we did lose those lives, what was President Trump's response to that?
Oh, he crushed them. I mean, look,
crushed them.
we annihilated ISIS in a year. Like, erased ISIS off the planet in a year. And when the Taliban was attacking our troops, and we had spent 8 years under President Obama and Vice President Biden under these ridiculous rules of engagement that got our service members killed and thousands of our service members injured, catastrophically injured. President Trump comes in and is like, no more. And he drops the MOB, the mother of all bombs, and annihilates them, and then calls the head of the Taliban and tells them, here's a picture of your house.
Yeah. Hey, bro, I got a picture of your house. You want a FAFO? You will find out.
we will murder them. And they stopped. And for 18 months after that, we didn't have one service member killed.
Well, they called him out. They called him out for his speech where he said, I could stop these wars with a phone call. People said, oh, could you? It's like, yes, he did. In fact, actually, yes. He already has, and he will again.
I mean, look, I've been very involved in Ukraine over the last, I've been to Ukraine 10 times since, and I could tell you that Ukrainian war could be over in 24 hours with a right leader. They don't want it to be over. You don't hear President Zelensky talking about peace. He's becoming the richest man in the world.
Yes.
And President Biden and all his friends are making money off this thing too. Yeah. Why would they don't want to end it? President Trump they asked him in the debate. He's like, I don't want any more people dying. And his I don't know if you've seen this, came out like 2 days ago. Putin got it in the news. He said President Trump is going to be the next president, and he's talking about ending Ukraine. I don't know his policies, but I'm willing to listen.
Yes.
That's the influence that President Trump has.
Well, honestly, when Putin talked to Tucker Carlson, he said, that he thought that he would like to end this war, and he was looking for it, to be ended. I don't think that the war in Ukraine is exactly what everyone thinks, because I have said many times that money is on a boomerang and it's going there and coming back.
To Washington, D.C.
It's the biggest money laundering thing. And that brings me, into this topic. I want to hear, before we discuss how all that funding could be better used for our nation's heroes, I want to understand some of the amazing stories. You went to Ukraine how many times?
10 times.
10 times. Of course
we have 30.
I want to hear about that.
We've had 30 trips in Ukraine for, in our efforts since it started. I say 30 trips. We've had a permanent presence since a week before the invasion, and still do right now. I have guys there now.
So maybe, you have a very unique perspective on the war in Ukraine. What are some stories that you could tell us that maybe the average American listening to this is not really aware of what's going on over there?
Yeah, well, I'll start with this. The mainstream media is not reporting what's the accurate news for what's happening in Ukraine. And by the way, that should be no surprise.
No big surprise.
Yeah, there's been over 1 million. I would guess, because of the inaccurate reporting, but I would guess, estimate over 1 million deaths since February 24th of 2022 when Putin crossed the border. Now, the reason I believe that President Biden allowed this to happen is because we've seen what happened in Afghanistan. Putin, 2014, Putin, President Obama's in office. Putin takes Crimea. Putin doesn't do anything during Trump's presidency. As soon as President Biden comes in, you see the Afghanistan withdrawal. Putin looks at that and is like, clearly this is the time to do it. He puts 100,000 troops on the border. He flexes. What's President Biden do? He removes our troops out of Ukraine and closes our embassy and consulate. And all the other nations followed suit, because that's what they do. They follow suit with what the president of the United States does. That's what happens, and that's why we have such influence around the world. What people don't realize about that, and I've gotten pushback on that by that statement, saying, well, there was only 160 American troops there. There could be one American troop there, and that's still impactful because of the Article 5 violation that's at risk. If Putin even accidentally injures a NATO troop, that's an Article 5 violation. All of NATO has to respond and act in hostile act back towards Putin. So Putin knows that. Biden knows that too. So Biden removes our troops from Ukraine. He removes our embassy, closes our consulate embassy. All the rest of the nation follows. That essentially gives Putin a green light to cross the border and invade Ukraine, because it's like, hey, we're not going to stop you. We don't want to be part of this. Do what you want to do, as long as you don't come into Poland. Fair game. And so by proxy, President Biden turns around and starts sending hundreds of billions of dollars, I think over $200 billion now, of our U.S. taxpayer money to Zelensky. It's unaccounted for, by the way.
Yeah, totally unaudited.
There's no congressional oversight whatsoever sending this money. And so what I've witnessed there is going to the front lines. And by the way, every time I've been 2 hours past the front lines. I've been where the frontline troops are. And I'm having to go there and bring something as simple as tourniquets, medical aid, teaching them TCCC, tactical combat casualty care, to help them be able to. If we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars there, can we not afford tourniquets to give them?
I was going to say, with that much money, so you're telling me we're sending over $200 billion and they don't have the resources for very inexpensive medical care? That begs the question, where is that money going?
The raise money is not a problem. I mean, look, Zelensky's probably one of the richest people in the world right now.
Oh, yeah. His
wife's taking lavish vacations, and they're and everybody was swayed by this guy because he wears a camouflage T-shirt and there's a Photoshop and they like, oh, that's the kind of leader we need. He's an actor, and he should get an Academy Award right now.
He's a pogue.
And so I've gotten like tons of pushback, by the way, by people that support me at Mighty Oaks, and they're like, why are you out there in Ukraine? Like, why are you supporting Zelensky's corrupt? And I'll say, yeah, Zelensky is corrupt, and I don't agree with the hundreds of billions of dollars. But what Americans need to realize, and I think conservatives and who are pushing back against this to realize, is that we can't ever let, as Americans, our politics get in the way of our compassion for people. Right. We are we're the nation, we're the shining light on the hill. We're the people that help people that can't help themselves. And I am an American first person. I believe in our borders first. I believe in our veterans first. But we still have the capacity to help. And we should never let our hearts become so jaded through this corruption and politics that we don't have compassion for people. And what I've seen in Ukraine is beyond the politics of this, beyond the corruption of this, is the consequence of it. And the consequence of these corrupt, evil people, including people in DC, what I've seen as a consequence of this is innocent women and children. Apartment buildings where only women and children live that have ballistic missiles the size of telephone poles being flown in the side of it. I've been to mass graves and identified mass graves for some of our government agencies who's not allowed to go there, and I've identified mass grave and leaked it to Fox News of 1,400 women and children with their hands bound behind their back, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I have videos of it of innocent women and children that were executed and pushed in a hole like garbage. And that was done by Putin and the Russians. And so, yeah, is Zelensky corrupt? Yes. Is Putin evil? Yes. You don't have to have a good guy, bad guy on the side, but in the middle of it is innocent people that are dying. And so for me, like, if the governments aren't doing the right thing and there's corruption involved, if I have the opportunity to go help these people, I will. And we've got a lot of Americans out. We recovered a lot of bodies of U.S. service members that went and volunteered to fight there. The Fox News reporter, Benjamin Hall, when Benjamin Hall was catastrophically wounded, and his team, Sasha, Fox correspondent, was killed, and Pierre Zasetsky was killed. We went in and rescued Benjamin Hall while Kiev was under attack. We rescued Benjamin Hall, got him out, and then delivered him to the U.S. military at the border because our White House wouldn't even allow them to go get him and get him home to his wife and 2 little girls. And we had to go do that in coordination, by the way, and requested, by the way, by the Pentagon and by the Special Operations Liaison Officer of the CIA, had to request us to go as civilians to do it because our White House didn't have the moral courage to go rescue one of our own. And we recovered the bodies.
Moral courage issue is like a thread through this entire administration, right? It's like you see it with Ukraine, you see it with homelessness, you see it with the border. You know what goes on at the border. The stories that people tell me, like people are getting killed and assaulted, and over in Israel they did, in Ukraine. Right across our own border on the way here, these people tell me how many times they were raped on the way here, how many times they were robbed and beat up, and that some of their family members didn't make it and got killed by the cartel. We are complicit in this disgusting, evil, insidious behavior around the globe, and we just parade around like we're like this great, compassionate country. None of that looks like compassion to me.
We're not. I'm like you. Like, I love America, by the way. I'll say that first. I'm a patriot. I'm one of the most patriotic people I know. I love America, and I will forever be a patriot to America. But if I love America so much that I will call out what's wrong with it, because it's important to call out something you love. And we are not the good guys right now. We're not.
No.
Our leadership, our elected leaders, whether they were duly appointed or unduly appointed, or making decisions with no compassion and no moral fortitude towards the people that are impacted. Whether it's people outside of our country coming across the border, whether it's the women and children in Ukraine, whether it's our allies left in Afghanistan, our American citizens that we left abroad, or American citizens in this country that are dying every day from suicide and fentanyl and all these things. Like, we are not the good guys. Our government's not the good guys right now. And as we the people,
we haven't been the good guys in a while. No, we're always kind of the bad guys, behind the scenes. We always have been. But can you give me again the name of your new book?
So my new book which is on Ukraine and the work we've done in Ukraine is called A Mission Without Borders. It releases August 13th, and it's up for pre-sale right now. So if anybody wants to support not just me selling a book, but it supports the efforts that we do around the world and the efforts we do here in the United States for our service members, military, and first responders, you go on Amazon or books, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold, and you can pre-order it. And I'd be so grateful for people that pre-order it and help support it.
Right, definitely get me over some of that information. I want to make sure that we get that out to anybody that views this, because it's really great work what you're doing. And I think if people read it, they'll have a better understanding of what's really going on and not what the media matrix wants you to believe. So before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, what do you do for active duty and veterans? What does Mighty Oaks do? What should people know?
Well, I think first and foremost, like any other nonprofit, they start with different reasons. And so Mighty Oaks falls in the category of like a pay it forward effort. Yeah. After my 8 deployments from Afghanistan, I came home and dealt with debilitating panic attacks and anxiety and depression and a very real, I almost lost my family, and a very real battle with taking my own life. And about 3 years in that downward spiral, I found restoration. Through the restoration of my own faith, became a Christian, and really reconciled a lot of things I was dealing with. And through that process, I found hope again, and I found purpose again. That purpose really manifested for me in like this deep burden to pay it forward. And that's how Mighty Oaks started. So I think it's super important to know how organization starts. Yeah. And I never knew where I would go. I just, even if it was one person, I just wanted to pay forward one person to helping do the same thing for them that was done for me. And what happened was, that one person turned around and helped the next guy, and that person turned around and helped the next guy, and on that process has taken place over the last 15 years to 500,000 people now. And, and it's been just an incredible pay it forward effort to where we're not just helping veterans and first responders, and we're helping put in a position to be part of the solution to help the next guy. And one of the unique things about it is not just as faith-based, but it's peer-based. And I'm sure from Beckcom and the work that you do, one of the most effective ways to help in the veteran community is peer-based. People who have been there and fell in their face, but got up and moved forward again. And that's what we do at Mighty Oaks. All of our team leaders at Mighty Oaks or alumni that we took beyond their struggle, let them have purpose again by paying it forward. And we train them to do that and take them and make them part of the process. And that's one of the reasons we've grown the way we have.
I love this so much. I hope that you and I can bring together some kind of partnership, because we do a very different thing. We're not necessarily in the same lane. We're in the same lane of helping service members wherever they are in their journey. But I think we could do something really beautiful for the veteran community, the active duty, military personnel transitioning, because we deal with a lot of active duty in their last 6 months where they're transitioning. We say, hey, it's better that we help you get as high as you can get on your way out. So if you haven't been memorializing your mental health because you're worried about not getting deployed or doing your cool job, now's the time we got to start talking about how we really feel and our depression, anxiety, survivor's guilt. If we have these orthopedics, we got to go memorialize them. Like I want to be a good partner to you guys. So, hopefully you and I can stay in touch and make big things happen. And I think that you have a really good shot at getting to 100%. So I'm excited to be along the journey with you here.
Probably too good of a shot. They'll probably be 1,000% if
we just flip all those zeros, right, to like tens, we could probably get it done.
Yes, I am.
So, well, God bless you, Chad Robichaux. Thank you for being my first guest. I mean, it's really
cool.
It's a big deal for me to have had you on, and I'm so excited about all the cool things that we can do in the future for our servicemen and women. So you have a blessed day, and I'm sure we'll chat again. I'm sure I'll see you on the news again because of Jillian. She'll have us on some program together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, that's my guy. There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.